according to the experts, it could take years before we see some decrease in the current interest rate. So today, I'll be answering a question that is on many people's mind right now, which is, will the interest rate keep increasing? But first, I must admit that I just lied. In fact, I won't be able to give you a precise answer on whether or not the interest rate will continue to increase over the next couple of months, since I am no Doc Brown and I don't have any time machine to see ahead in the future, but instead I'll be analyzing the current global economic situation to see what could happen over the next couple of months. First, when we talk about the interest rates and the global economy itself, we need to understand one important aspect, which is why does the Fed and the Bank of Canada keep increasing the interest rates since the last year? And this brings us to the favorite word of Papa Powell, which is
inflation.
The inflation simply measures the increase in prices over a certain period of time, which is often measured by the consumer price index. So basically, it can be seen as the variation of the price of living. Let's say, for example, that you are grocery shopping right now, where the inflation is in the difference of price of articles that you are buying right now, for example, butter and bread compared to what it was 3, 5, or 10 years from now. Usually, when the general price level rise, it means that you'll need to buy fewer goods and services, and so it means that the inflation is a reduction of the purchasing power of money. It is why the value of $1,000 right now is way less compared to what it was 40 years ago. Nowadays, the problem with inflation has been created throughout the pandemic because everything was basically shut down and the global economy has obviously massively slow, and this has resulted in many people losing their jobs, but also many people working from home and also receiving a bunch of money from the different governments. And for example, those people could not necessarily spend their money as much as they did before the pandemic to go, for example, to the theater or to the restaurant. And it means that the economy wasn't growing as much as it did before the pandemic, and at the same time, the people were staying at home and they were massively investing, which has resulted in some great increase in the overall markets, for example, in the real estate markets as well as in the stock market. But what do you think happens when you increase massively a number of things that you have? Well, it lost a lot of its value. Let's take the example of a Ferrari. If there was millions and millions of these cars, it would obviously lose a lot of its value and prestige. Well, the same can be applied to money. By multiplying the amount that everyone had and by printing a lot of money as they have been doing throughout the pandemic, well, it has created a massive problem of inflation that has been through the roof in the summer of 2022, before that it started to cool down with the multiple increase of the interest rate. However, the concerning point for the Fed, the Bank of Canada, and everyone that currently has a debt is that since July 2023, the inflation has restarted to grow, and knowing that we are still far from the target of the inflation set by the Fed and the Bank of Canada of between 1 to 3%, well, it means that we might assist to other increase of the interest rates in the future. But right now, you might be wondering, hey, but Louis, why does the Fed and the BOC keeps increasing the interest rate to decrease the total inflation, and why is the inflation that important? Just see it like that. As I told you earlier, throughout the pandemic, everyone was staying at home because everything was closed, and while many people were stacking their cash, there was multiple of businesses that have closed and that have been going to bankruptcies because of the lack of clients. And it means that for all the businesses that have survived throughout the pandemic, when everything has reopened, they have increased the prices of all their goods and services. But the problems with their clients and the global population itself is that the salaries haven't followed the inflation. In fact, we are long far from the famous promotion of 6 foot $5 from Subway, and the price of things cannot continue to increase as much as they are doing right now. So you can understand that a certain gap has been created between your increase in your salary every single year compared to the massive increase of the price of living. It is why it is crucial for the national financial institutions such as the BOC and the Fed to use their only tool under their control, which is the interest rate, to limit the total inflation. It is why by increasing the total interest rate, their objective will be to reduce the growth of the economy by obviously normalizing the price of living. And so throughout these kind of periods, these financial institutions are basically considered as having a hawkish vision, which is a vision that is promoted promoting the future increase of the interest rate to regulate everything. But since their objective isn't to cause any economic disaster as we've seen throughout the 80s, it means that they are taking their time to slowly but surely increase the interest rate. Unfortunately, this occurrence of events won't have only some positive effects, because the first ones that will be touched by the increase of the interest rates will obviously be everyone that currently has a debt. Indeed, the first thing that you do when you want to contract a debt is to go to the bank, and the first thing obviously that they'll do on their side is to make your financial situation. But right after, they'll be asking you what is the kind of loan that you want. So for example, you can decide to have a variable rate or a fixed rate on a certain period. Obviously, everyone that has a variable rate will be massively impacted by some future hikes of the interest rate on the present moment. But everyone that has a fixed rate that has been fixed a few years ago won't be affected right now by the increase of the interest rate, but they're going to be affected when it's going to be the time for them to renew their mortgage in a certain period at the interest rate at that time. And a big problem for the inflation is coming from the housing supply problems that we have over here in Canada and in the US, because we don't currently have enough houses for everyone, which is putting obviously with the supply and the demand a lot of pressure on the price of houses over here in Canada. And so this could result in some high interest rates that would be there to stay. It is why right now I wouldn't recommend to anyone to purchase anything with debt if it isn't necessary, or if it isn't any kind of assets that will produce some great cash flow. For example, it is still a great idea to purchase different real estate properties that will give you great cash flow every single month. Now, up to this point, we've only seen how the Fed and the Bank of Canada with the monetary policy can affect the inflation with the manipulation of the interest rates. But keep in mind that even the government could impact the inflation, notably with the fiscal policy. Indeed, the governments could either decide to cut their spending or to add new taxes to fight the inflation. Nevertheless, since the fear of a future recession is pretty much behind us, since we've seen some pretty good growth in the GDP over the next couple of quarters, well, I personally believe that the majority of the hikes of the interest rate have already been done. But I still believe that the interest rates will continue to increase at a slower pace until the end of 2024, as it is predicted by many analysts, because with the inflation that has restarted to grow over the last couple of months, we are still far from what is the target inflation of between 1 to 3%. Just keep in mind that as a global society, it is better for these financial institutions to increase the interest rates to fight the inflation, because if we continue to have such a high inflation, it will cause many problems in the prices of things that will continue to increase massively. And since most salaries are not able to follow the inflation, it means that many people will become poor. Unfortunately, everyone that has made some bad decisions concerning the debt over the last couple of years and months might pay the price over the next couple of years. But at the same time, for everyone that has been able to stack some cash and to make some great investments, well, it might also represent some great opportunities on the different market, especially when we see the high APY that are available right now. But it is why today more than ever, it is crucial for you to understand what are the benefits of saving and investing as much as you can. Because keep in mind that it is pretty much one of the only things on which you currently have control, since you don't have any control on the interest rates and the inflation. So on your side, if this situation is scaring you and you want to find great ways on how you can save more money in 2023, well, check out the video that's gonna be right over here, and I will see you soon. Peace!